How we doing? All right, gotta be a little bit more excited about spring ball than that now. Come on now. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for being here today. All right.
You want to say anything before we start questions?
Well, obviously appreciate the fact that everyone's here. I actually like to start by saying that I hope we could pack up Matthew Knight, right? Knowing that the women's basketball team is hosting the first and second round of the tournament. So I think that's important to mention. I think it's a great example for all of us, all sports here at the University of Oregon. So I know we'll be there in full support, and certainly would encourage everyone to be there. So I thought that's really important to mention before we get spring ball going. So, but aside from that, again, appreciate everyone being here. Certainly we're excited as can be about spring ball. It's always that time of year where there's a lot of hope, a lot of new players, some guys that have developed, and it's their time. And you certainly have an opportunity to set your goals for your team to improve, to elevate the standards. And we certainly have done a bunch of that as well. But with that being said, I'll open up the floor to questions and fire away.
On the right, Andrew.
Going big picture, what would constitute a successful spring football for you? Are there certain things you want to see by the time this thing wraps?
No doubt. I think it's really important to mention that from a goal standpoint, big picture, number one would be discipline. I think you saw it last year. We really hurt ourselves with the amount of penalties that we had, and that's on us. We got to do a better job coaching guys. We got to do a better job emphasizing those things and creating scenarios that put our players in situations that allow them to practice that. I think film study is really important as well. I think secondly, we'd like to be the most fundamentally sound team that we can be. You can never be good enough at technique. You can never have enough polish on your craft, and we certainly want to be that team that technically is on point 100% of the time. So that being said, the amount of individual periods and technical work periods will increase. You'll see we'll even start practice with a turnover period and a ball security tackling period, a lot like the New England Patriots use. Good team to kind of mimic, right? They do a pretty decent job. So I think that's important to mention. It's important to mention another goal for us is to show consistency in performance. We were up and down, more specifically when we were on the road. And we have to be a better football team when the environment changes and when everything isn't perfect. And we also want to establish a culture of excellence. We do. And you'll hear our players say it a bunch, saying that we want to, in essence, develop an intolerance for anything or anyone that does not uphold the standards of our culture. And it's important to our guys to make being a Duck a very important, a very difficult club to be a member of because of the sacrifices that we make and how hard we work. And that relates to being, a guy in the classroom, a student athlete, out in the community, as well as a football player.
On the right, Ryan.
Mario, obviously, we talked to you about retaining some of the guys you retain on your staff. Can you kind of describe what the new guys have been like and how you're looking to mesh them this spring, the new coaches, and
Sure.
and also your philosophy on taking advantage of the 10th assistant and how you decided to go with that?
Yeah, well, the new guys have been excellent. They fit our culture. We certainly vetted them extensively to make sure that they did fit what we were looking for. First and foremost, being great people, having a great, I would say, background in developing the student athlete, high care factor guys, high levels of expertise. We achieved that with the guys that have joined our staff. I'll start with Coach Mastro on the offensive side. All his time at Nevada with Coach Alton, the development of the pistol offense, and some of the nuances that they kind of brought into play over at Washington State. Has some really good ideas, but more importantly, he's a strict disciplinarian when it comes to being a running backs coach. And a lot of times I think that gets lost in the shuffle. Running back coaches have to have that kind of discipline. They have to understand the way the scheme works as it relates to the front. So he's done a great job. Coach Bobby Williams, I know really well, and he's been strictly our special teams coach, and we expect that to pay major dividends. Bobby is a true professional, has been a head football coach before at Michigan State. We go way back, and he has experience just about everywhere at the NFL level, in the SEC, and he is thrilled to be over here with us in the Pac-12 and here at the University of Oregon. Moving on over to Coach Alex Mirabal, which is great because he's a guy that I trust completely with offensive line play. We'll get to work on that together. I think it won't take long before you realize why he has such a strong following. It's because he is the consummate teacher. He's a guy that is a difference maker in the lives of those of the young men he's been able to coach over the years. And I think he's already made a pretty big impact with the guys on our not only our team, but on our staff. Dante has done a great job. Dante Williams, he got here early. He was one of the first guys. He is a high-energy guy. He still kind of looks like he could play the position, so he jumps out there and, he'll be able to demonstrate when the time comes, and we're looking forward to that. He has tremendous ties in recruiting all over the country. He has a background and experience with Coach Hayward as well. So we look forward to some of the things that he's bringing to the table, particularly as a teacher and as a developer. And then we've got Court Dennison, who's one of the bright young minds in college football. He actually was right from Salt Lake and played up north a little bit. And Court is a high-energy guy, just like all these guys are. And I guess it'll be redundant, but I could say the same things about each and every guy that we are able to hire, because that's what they are. That's what we look for, and they also know the expectation for them is extremely high, and we will hold them to that.
On the right, Jerry.
Yeah, Coach, after the dominating performance against Arizona and Oregon State, the bowl game, sorry to bring it up, but do you think a lot of that was the whirlwind, lack of preparation time? I think fans are still kind of wondering what happened, and you've had time to evaluate all this now and how to prevent that in the future.
I don't think you blame it on a whirlwind. I don't think you do. You assess it for how you played, how you prepared, must do a better job, and you go forward. But there's no reason to point or blame. That's the worst thing you can do, right? For us, it's important to beat good football teams, regardless of whether we're playing home or away. And that's what we assess our processes as it relates to that.
Right here, Matt.
Justin Herbert and Troy Dyer going into their third years as starters. What do you expect from those guys during a spring ball? Or what kind of things that those guys need to work on when they've kind of entrenched themselves?
Yeah, the common answer is people always want to say leadership. That's kind of a given. We want to see that. But honestly, I expect these guys to be much better at the end of spring than they are going into spring. This is a development game. Football always will be about development, and both guys are really good football players. And they've had a tremendous impact on this football team and in the community as well. But they're just scratching the surface, in our opinion. Both these guys have their best days ahead of them. They're certainly students of the game. They work on their craft constantly, and we expect them to take that next step. Good players must eventually become great players and dominant players, and that's what these guys need to become.
Hey, Coach, how healthy are you guys entering spring?
We've got a couple guys nicked up, particularly guys like Jake Hansen, had some work done, and he'll miss a little bit of spring, but he'll be able to bounce back after a little bit. Pickett, our safety, he will be out for a little bit. He might make it back at the end, may not. A couple other guys that I was going to touch on a little bit. I know we got Sampson that'll probably miss spring. Okay. On the offensive side of the ball, we should be relatively healthy. I had a couple more guys I wanted to touch on. Sampson. Sampson was the one that got dinged up. You saw him in the bowl game. So I think overall we're relatively healthy. This time of year, you never have enough guys. You'd like to have 125. You don't. We have enough to practice and get better. We do feel a couple of guys that are a little bit nicked up will come back for the second half of spring. This year we're doing a little bit differently, right? We're having 5 practices before spring break, and then coming back for 10 sessions after. And I think that'll help us as we go into the fall to have a little bit more time to recoup, rehab, and be ready to go for the season.
On the right.
Mario, with the new strength and conditioning program, are there any guys that have really popped and that really stood out and embraced that and made a big difference?
I think they all have. The Oregon fourth quarter program, as we call it, has really taken off, and it's had a significant impact on the way our guys are developing. We do so much functional training. We do so much mobility work. Everything has a carryover to either position-specific stuff, football movements, acceleration, deceleration work, coming to balance. You name it, we're doing it. And Coach Feld, Coach File, Coach Shad Williams, Coach Dillon, Coach Davis. All these guys, they're fully invested because that's what it takes. And at the same time, we've had to teach it to our staff so that they understand how it comes together. And some of them have actually, had similar experiences, but it's what we have preached and what we have made the most important part of us taking that next step from a discipline standpoint. And we've made it clear from January all the way to the end of August is when we'll gain that discipline, our mentality, our mental and physical toughness. And the Oregon fourth quarter program is just that.
Coach, with kind of new guys coming in and stepping into what will hopefully be starter roles, what do you need to see from some of these guys who've been backups to then feel confident going into the fall that they can move into a starting role for you?
Hopefully a bunch of excited guys, right? Hopefully them recognizing it's their time, that there's opportunity there. And, at the same time, making sure that guys that they might see a guy or two on the depth chart ahead of them, that they see it the exact same way. We have to breed competition, and we have to make that a very welcoming aspect of our program, knowing that, look, for the guys that want to do this for the long haul, here your scholarship, right, is renewed every single day. You go to your meal, you go to class, you come back, you might not have won the job, but you still have a locker, right? Well, we know in that next league, that competition is so fierce. You go to lunch, you may not have a locker when you come back, right? We have to get used to that type of a competitive atmosphere and environment to take that next step as a football team. And I think as a program, you have to also teach your players you welcome competition. You do. You embrace it because at the end of the day, it makes us all better.
All right, Andrew?
Based on kind of your observations of the offseason conditioning and what you've heard from the coaches who've been running that, are there some guys you think could be primed to kind of take on some bigger roles you're excited about seeing in spring ball?
I expect a lot. It's hard to mention, a couple. I do want to say Dylan Mitchell really stands out. I'd like to say Diamador Lenoir really stands out as a name that continues to pop up. I think Justin Hollins and Jalen Jelks are a couple of really, I would call them the most disruptive players, some of the most disruptive players in our conference, and their bodies are changing, they're developing. They're able to bend better, move better, explode. And I think it's going to make them just better or more productive football players, not to mention increase their durability. That's a big part of this thing. We have to increase our ability to be able to withstand the rigors of the season, and this will help that a whole bunch.
Here on the left, Rob?
You touched on it, but just this schedule and this format and having the break, can you go over a little more? What do you think the pluses and minuses of this schedule are for you?
Sure. The pluses are that we roll right from our strength and conditioning program to our winter phase, which is now the Oregon fourth quarter program, and we're able to roll right into football. Okay. We thought that if we waited to come in after spring break, that we would actually extend that fourth quarter program to a couple extra weeks. Might not be the best thing to do. And then there's a couple weeks of a break, and then you got to come back and do football. Felt that coming in completely almost cold turkey-ish would be rough on them. I didn't think it would be fair to them. They've really they're ready to kind of reap the rewards and the benefits of having worked this hard. I mean, they're chomping at the bit. Certainly, when you move up spring ball, you also afford yourself the opportunity that if there was an injury, that on the back end you have a couple of extra weeks to heal up. So the benefit is we get to spread it out. We have 1 day of teaching in between, minus for 1 week, which is this Friday, Saturday. But you want that day after practice to be able to debrief. You want to be able to teach, correct, advance, do all the things necessary just to be a better teacher, to have these guys learn it better and really digest our schemes. Now, we have, our schemes are still intact. Offensively, there are some tweaks, but there's a lot of the same stuff, so we'll look very similar. I mean, we're Oregon fast, speed, tempo, everything, high energy, explosive plays, right? Obviously the goal. And defensively, the schemes carry over as well. So we have an advantage from that standpoint.
Any awkwardness, though, just with having the break in the middle?
Well, the break's coming. It's one way or the other. It's either the awkwardness of not working out for 2 weeks and say, hey, let's go play ball, or the awkwardness of having the break right in the middle and having to come back. And, I think what it does is you get a taste of football for 5 days. And for us, we can install our entire offense and defense within 5 or 6 days. So you install it, for that period of time. They're able to take care of their final exams, which obviously academics is at the forefront of everything we do. They take care of their final exams. They have a taste of what we're doing in the springtime, and now they spend that week, yes, to go see their families and some time off, but they also have that in their minds to be able to always stay a little bit in football mode and come back prepared to take on the challenges of spring practice.
Coach, easy question over here, I think. With all the off-season changes, I imagine you've been pretty busy. I'm wondering if you could just describe the mood of the team, including the coaches, in just a couple of words.
A lot of energy. I think you'll see that on a daily basis. It is really all we've been preaching is culture. And I like to point to our women's basketball team. There's a culture that makes or breaks a team. And I think last year there was a foundation laid between all of us that gave us a chance to start building upon that. But there's a big difference between winning 7 games and winning 8, 9, 10, 11. They all get exponentially harder, right? Exponentially more difficult. So, and to make that happen, it's a little bit of everything, but a lot of culture. Where, again, everything's about trust and belief and accountability and not compromising that. Doing the right things. And so that was a long answer to a simple question, right? You said it was easy, but I hope that answers your question.
Right here in front, Matt.
With Crosby gone, we know what Alio and Throckmorton can do.
Crosby's gone? When did this happen? Yeah, Crosby. And what a job he did at the Combine, huh? That's awesome.
How does George Moore fit into that battle for tackle spot? And what have you seen maybe from the time he arrived till now?
He's an athletically gifted guy, got a lot of ability, and has been here for a year, so he understands the system better. And then you have a guy like Brady Aiello, who's been here for a while and actually started several games as a freshman. You have Logan Bathke on your roster, who it's kind of his time to make a move as well. You got Jacob Capra. You've got some really large individuals coming in as well that are good football players. So I think that George finds himself in a great position to battle. But I think anyone in our roster, particularly that offensive line position, knows that it's open season for that, and that the best competitors and the best performers will have the best chance. Kind of busy in there.
Jerry in the back.
Coach, back here, 20, 25 years ago, there was a lot of hitting. I mean, guys were beating up on each other. These days, not as much. You get 15 days in the spring. How much really hitting will you do, and how do you gauge how much to do and not beat up on yourself?
Well, that's always a key. The good thing for us is having that day in between. So you're spacing it out. Now, we are going to train in the weight room. We're going to train hard in the weight room, and you can when you balance it out and you have a day in between. You have 15 practices, 3 must be in shorts. The rest you could use pads as you need to, but you could only dedicate 3 full days to tackling, and then another 8 practices to having, I believe it's a percentage, maybe 20% of your practice to tackling. We'll go full tackle to the ground 3 times. And mind you, and I'll mention why, is we have to learn how to practice while staying on our feet. 99% of all injuries happen when guys are on the ground and guys get rolled up. And it's as clumsy as, a guy may be having tripped and he didn't get up fast enough. A wide receiver's engaged in a block and he gets rolled over and there goes a meniscus. Or an offensive lineman's engaged in a block and there's a running back on the ground, he doesn't get up fast enough or should never been on the ground, and there we have an ACL. So the emphasis will be, we're going to be physical, but we want to stay up. We have to learn how to practice like the pros do. We have to learn how to thud. We have to learn how to run our feet through contact. We have to learn how to stay off the ground, stay off the quarterback, so we can still get everything we want out of practice without compromising our health.
Couple defensive linemen. Malik Young is listed on the depth chart. Is that official that he will get this year back?
Still working on it. No word. Yes, sir.
But he'll be able to practice, or is that just?
He will. Okay. He will. He's able to practice until there is a decision made on that, but still waiting on word.
And then last summer, Rex Manu was listed as definitely out for the 2017 season, but there was a belief that perhaps 2018 could come back if he was healthy. Is he at all have any kind of role in this program, or are you still, I don't know, does he have any kind of chance of coming back?
As of right now, he will not. All right, he will be. He will end up being a medical player. Okay.
On the left, Rob.
in terms of just depth at various position groups, anything a real priority? Like you feel like you need to find some depth this month because it's a concern.
Yes, we do. We do, and it's good that we have 3 defensive backs here as early enrollees. That's really important between Hockey and Verone and Steve. There's a lot of opportunity back there. They've done a really good job in the offseason, and it's quite an adjustment now to go from recruiting to get right into the offseason program. That's a hello in a hurry. They've done a really good job, really good job. And then both backs, Travis and Jamal, have really shown, like the other guys have shown, just really gifted guys that have bought into what we're doing and how we're doing things and why we're doing them that way. And they're joined by Tyler. And Tyler, you know, we all saw the importance of making sure that you're set at quarterback, not only at the first level, but at your second and third levels. And so Tyler, you know, along with Braxton, because Braxton is really another guy worth mentioning because he's had a tremendous offseason now. Braxton is a competitor. He's looking forward to coming out and attacking this spring and showing that next step in his development. So those are all positions, those 3, that we must develop depth. We don't have enough defensive linemen on campus right now to say we need to develop more depth. That'll be a conversation certainly in the fall.
You just talked about with the true freshmen, kind of what are your impressions of how they've been so far, and what are the biggest difficulties from transitioning from high school like this?
It's difficult. It's a big jump. It's a big jump. But you know what? The first thing that stands out is they're made of the right stuff. Okay, the right DNA. They're competitive. They're respectful. They're mindful. They're considerate. They want to be at Oregon, which is right, got to be at the top of the list, and they want to do things the right way, and they do. They smell opportunity. They know this is a big opportunity for them, and I think if you ask them, they tell you right now the tremendous advantage it is to be here in January. It really changes their dynamic from a development standpoint. So great guys. I think they're going to be great team members, and honestly expect every single one of them to play and contribute.
Kind of like last year's spring football format, will there be any fully open practices for fans and also any practices held outside of Eugene, like last year's Jesuit?
We will. We'll have another one in Portland. I believe Franklin High School is when we'll be traveling over there. Still trying to figure out the rest of the dynamic. We will have some open practices. Obviously, the spring game is always open, but there'll be a lot of similarities in that respect. All right, guys, thank you very much. You guys better be excited now.